Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Happy 4th of July and God bless America. We appreciate you tuning in on a Friday morning, but not just any Friday, a very important holiday for the United States of America, an incredible country, and so many gifts that God has given us here. And I do hope you could stay tuned for the entire program. We will be back with you live on Monday, but we put together, I think, a great show for you today with the help of the wonderful people back in Irondale, Alabama, including my wonderful producer, Richard, and associate producer, Deb. So we'll start out after the news and the weather with my friend Doug Keck, who is semi-retired from EWTN, but not retiring from his great contributions on air, including joining us on Fridays for the Inside Word. He'll join us at about 15 minutes past the hour. And then for Fact Check Friday, being that we're patriotic, we're looking at the history of the country, as we started with Father Mitch Pacwa yesterday, I want to take a look at the media and their lack of understanding for the First Amendment. It is so interesting how they're reacting to the lawsuit settled between CBS and the President of the United States. Now, CBS, if you recall, totally falsified an interview with Kamala Harris by editing out an answer they didn't think was good enough in terms of making her look knowledgeable on a particular subject or knowledgeable enough in terms of the war in Israel. And so they took a statement from her from another interview and then edited it out. So basically changing the interview to help her in the election, which you cannot do. And yet the media are all just so upset. And they're saying that CBS sold out. They're saying this is horrible. They're saying this is setting a precedent. Well, how about doing your job and not messing around with an interview? How about releasing a transcript to show that you kept to the actual interview itself? None of the media is mentioning that in their complaints. They're just getting so upset and pulling their hair out over this. But again, they refuse to look in the mirror. So we'll take a look at what the First Amendment is and what it isn't, despite what the media think. And then you're going to be so excited to hear from Father Donald Calloway, a wonderful Marian priest. He weighs in on a new study regarding, and this is a secular study, my friends, the healing power of the Rosary. So that's the first hour of the program. Let's take a look at the weather, giving you an idea of what you're in for this weekend. Well, 4th of July festivities, especially in the South and Florida, the Southeast, are going to be erupted by rainy weather. Florida already seeing showers and thunderstorms this week is due to a possible tropical system in the Atlantic that has a medium chance of developing over the next week. Now, even if there's not a tropical development, the rainy weather is expected to persist into next weekend. The rest of the country, they're saying, for the most part, will have decent weather. Right now, it's a few minutes past the hour, and we do need to check the news here on a Friday, July 4th, on EWTN. Happy 4th of July. Rome 25, the Way of St. James, Santiago de Compostela 27, Jerusalem 33. It's a long name, but it is the name of a project that was created by a group of young people and presented this week at a briefing at the Holy See Press Office as part of a manifesto of young Christians in Europe. The Vatican says the initiative involves pilgrimages, evangelization, and healing to restore the soul of Europe, rekindling the hope so often lost, as stated by Pope Francis. Those involved, according to the Vatican, aim to tell the world that everyone can reconnect with beauty and truth and love of Christ, especially when it's difficult in times of trouble and struggles. The 2024 report on Peter's Pence just released showing an increase in donations supporting the Pope's mission. The annual fund bringing in donations for the Pope's mission for the Universal Church, raising €58 million in 2024. That's an increase from €52 million back in 2023. A total of €13.3 million funding 239 direct assistance projects in 66 countries around the world. The Catholic Conference of Wisconsin decrying yesterday's decision from the Wisconsin Supreme Court upholding a lower court ruling that allows abortions to continue in the state despite a long-standing near-total abortion ban still on the books. The conference saying in a statement it's nonsensical for the court majority to pretend that Wisconsin's long-standing abortion ban was impliedly repeated by previous legislatures. For 175 years, everyone in the state, supporters and opponents alike, understood that the law and its subsequent amendment reflected the legislature's intent that abortion should remain illegal. Well, the 4th of July travel period in full swing. AAA is predicting over 72 million people are venturing out at least 50 miles from home over this Independence holiday period. It began on June 28th and it goes through July 6th. That's an additional 1.3 million road travelers compared to 2024. It also says 5.84 million will be flying to their destination, and that's also a new record. Meanwhile, here's some good news. Average gas prices are down as people hit the road for the 4th of July. AAA reporting the average price of a gallon is $3.16. That's a little higher than a month ago, but about 35 cents cheaper than this time last year. Prices are highest in California, where the cost averages $4.56 a gallon, and cheapest in Mississippi at $2.70. Federal officials are warning of lone wolves who pose the biggest terror threat during holiday celebrations amid tensions between the U.S. and the Middle East. Tensions escalating on June 22nd when the U.S. bombed nuclear sites in Iran, according to the Trump administration officials. The Department of Homeland Security said the agency is working closely with the FBI and other federal, state, and local law enforcement partners to ensure a safe and secure Independence Day across the country. According to the statement, the DHS said, "We are enhancing security measures and coordinating intelligence sharing to proactively address potential risks, including those from lone wolf actors." At this time, they said DHS is not aware of any specific or credible threats for 4th of July celebrations this weekend. Meanwhile, medical and safety experts are looking to raise awareness about the dangers of fireworks. Dr. Michael Lakawa of UCI Health in Southern California says he treated one little boy who lost 3 fingers on one hand, but also suffered injuries to his stomach, colon, and small bowel.
There are certain types of fireworks that are essentially loaded with types of gunpowder that explode. They're like small pieces of dynamite, and they cause an explosion which has a wave of energy that passes through your body.
That child has now recovered. Last year, there were more than 14,000 fireworks-related injuries reported in the U.S., most of them involving hands, head, and ears. 11 people were killed. The Consumer Product Safety Commission reminding folks to never let children play with fireworks, to keep a bucket of water or a hose close by in case of a fire, and carefully follow instructions on packaging when handling fireworks. Andrew Whitman tells us today a state judge in New York is ordering New York State prisons to fully implement a new law cutting back on how long inmates can be kept in solitary confinement.
The State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision suspended the new rules under emergency provisions during the informal prison guard strike earlier this year. The judge Wednesday ruled the department couldn't do that and ordered the new policy be in place by July 11th. That new law, the Halt Solitary Confinement Act, limits how long any inmate can be kept in solitary and bans solitary for inmates considered vulnerable, including people under 21 or over 55 and the disabled. Andrew Whitman, NBC News Radio, New York.
Funeral plans for televangelist Jimmy Swaggart are set. He died earlier this week in Louisiana at the age of 90. There will be a public viewing at the Family Worship Center in Baton Rouge 1 week from Saturday. Services will be next Sunday, a week from this Sunday. And exposure to air pollution, other contaminants, and traditional herbal medicines may be contributing to the development of lung cancer in non-smokers. That's according to a study published in Nature, that these substances can be linked to the same genetic mutations that are associated with smoking and that promote lung cancer development. Scientists finding that more air pollution a person endured, the more tumors were found in their lungs. Tammy Trujillo tells us today that Qantas Airlines says a cyber attack has exposed the data of 6 million of its customers.
The Australian airline says it detected unusual activity Monday on a platform that stored millions of names, phone numbers, email addresses, and birth dates. Qantas says it's still investigating the full extent of the breach, but that it expects a significant amount of data was stolen. The airline claims that no personal financial data, like passport and credit card numbers, was accessed. The attack came just days after the FBI issued an alert saying that airlines were being targeted by a cyber crime group called Scattered Spider. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
In Flint, Michigan, the city there finishing its lead service pipe replacement effort 11 years after the city's lead-tainted water crisis became national news. Nearly 11,000 pipes are replaced. The water crisis began in 2014 when the state-appointed emergency management managers switched Flint's water supply from the Detroit supplied system to the Flint River to save money, but did not treat the water to prevent corrosion. The city was then sued by residents and nonprofits back in 2017 and agreed to a settlement to replace all lead pipes. Brian Shook tells us Microsoft is laying off thousands of employees in its latest round of cuts.
The move is expected to impact less than 4% of its global workforce across different teams. The software company has held several rounds of layoffs already this year, including in May when it announced layoffs of around 6,000 workers. Microsoft reportedly is looking to reduce the layers of managers that stand between individual contributors and top executives. I'm Brian Shook.
And the Pittsburgh International Airport needs volunteers to take part in a dress rehearsal ahead of its new terminal opening. The airport is looking for 3,000 to 4,000 volunteers who will reenact what the opening day of the new terminal will look like in an effort to have a smooth first day of the terminal once it opens. The volunteers will act as passengers and will follow scripts as they move together through the terminal. And taking a look at the weekend, Jurassic World Rebirth is on track to rule the box office over the holiday.
I can guarantee your safety. I mean, more or less. More or less?
The latest entry into the dinosaur franchise brought people out for the theaters on Wednesday for a projected opening day gross of $28 million. It's expected to make nearly $130 million. Over the long holiday weekend, Jurassic World Rebirth stars Scarlett Johansson as a dinosaur hunter, and it sets up a new series of Jurassic Park movies. So far, the franchise has made over, get this, $6 billion worldwide since the first Jurassic Park came out in the early 90s. That's a look at the news on this 4th of July holiday. We'll take a look at the First Amendment when we come back for our Fact Check Friday. Happy 4th. God bless America. Always great to catch up with my friend Doug Keck, recently retiring as the Chief Operating Officer and President of the network, but he'll always, of course, have one foot in the door because of his love of the network and Mother Angelica and all the great programming in which he has been so involved. And we're so happy he's decided to continue with us here on Fridays for the Inside Word, giving us an update on what's coming up on the fabulous EWTN network. He also is still hosting Bookmark and Father Spitzer's Universe. So how goes, and should I say partial retirement, my friend?
Semi-retirement kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because just so people know, if people are, I'm still an employee of EWTN, and I'm still working for EWTN, but my focus is going to be just on the programs that I particularly work on, and be able to relieve myself of some of the other administrative and other things, and to give some room for some of the great people, Peter Gagnon, Enrique Duprat, and John Elson, to kind of spread their wings and get them to really be able to push forward with new ideas and better ideas. As I always tried to say, everywhere I've gone, I think I've made it better when I came in, and I hopefully made it better when I left, because there's a wonderful team, and they get to do things and look at things in a slightly different way. And, there's a lot of things that are, with the EWTN Next and Plus and new technologies and things like that. We've been through a lot of technological changes ourselves, from, as we said, audio tape and videotape and different types
Cassette.
of videotape. All the different formats that I've been through over the years, and this is again the next level of technology, and in a lot of ways it's the younger people have even better feel for how to make that work and how they consume it, and so be able to bring in some people who have some insights to that age bracket and to that technology is really exciting.
It has to be exciting for you to have more time then to focus. I mean, not that you didn't focus well and strongly on the programs, but it does free you up a bit to do maybe a little bit more in those areas.
I hope so. I hope, I'm certainly not looking to put less effort into the programs. In fact, we have some different concepts and things that we're kicking around doing. One of the things that we're playing around with, we haven't aired any of them or put any of them online, called Epilogue, which is basically we're taking some of the famous people of Catholics who we have on, Chesterton Station or on our Saints and Scoundrels, and say, well, they're there. Let's do a bookmark brief with them on one of their great books. Kind of a thing, and just something that's a couple of minutes long that introduces this wonderful, great work of this famous Catholic, and them in character talking about their book and why they wrote it, etc. So that's something new we're trying. We've been talking about doing something maybe on Father Spitzer's, a segment in the future, maybe this fall, called Alternate Universe, where we might have one show a month or something like that. We have a guest on. That Father might be able to interview as well, give a kind of a little different feel for the show, just mix it up a little bit. So those are a couple of different things kicking around, continuing to do the Catholic Sphere on theology with Colin Donovan gives us an opportunity to talk about some interesting topics, so there's a lot of fun, but it's also the ability of not having that pressure all the time. And it really is a 24/7 pressure in many ways of having to be concerned about what's going on at the network, and what's happening. As you know, television is a 24/7 beast. Media is, things are always changing, things are always happening, and thank goodness over the years I have been able to step away and step back from some of those things, so that's been greatly appreciated. Working on the news and getting it, and then kind of stepping back from it because it wasn't something I really wanted to spend my life on when I was younger, and I wasn't interested in spending my life on it later on in my career. So I was happy to be able to focus on the things that were more oriented towards evangelization and the teaching and those kinds of things, and different ways of presenting information, hopefully in a pithy format that people could access, and then make them want to learn more.
Well, I think I love the title, Alternate Universe, because doesn't it feel like you and I have talked over the years about how sometimes some people seem to be living in an alternate universe? Like, where are they, and where's reality? So I think that's a very catchy title. Okay, we do want to discuss, I'm sure your programs are part of this, and I don't want to let us get away with the time because I always love to promote what we do.
Absolutely.
What's coming up? We've got 4th of July weekend, of course, but then what about next week? What are we looking at?
Well, 4th of July weekend, happening today, there's a news special called Faith on the Hill that our news team put together. I think I'm interested in watching that one myself. Almost sounds like a contradiction in terms there, Faith on the Hill, but hopefully it's getting better. So we'll see how it's playing itself out. And then over the weekend, we've got a couple of specials. Watchmen of the Night, very popular program with Benedictine nuns. Something's exciting. You'd probably be interested. Marian Procession from the Holy Land. This is a monthly rosary procession from the site of the Annunciation Incarnation in Nazareth. And it's airing at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. You can check that out. Focolare people can check out Kiera Lubick, Love Conquers All. That's tomorrow night, Saturday night at 8 p.m. And then on Sunday, Into the Breach. It's a mini-series. You can check that out. There was a new episode involved with that. And as we moved into the following week, we also have the Holy Mass from... just wanted to confirm that is from Nazareth, direct from the Holy Land, and that airs on Monday the 7th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. So a couple events from the Holy Land. We've got also our mini-series on Good Soil with Jason Craig, talking about, in a sense, getting back to the basics and seeing that kind of simpler lifestyle and kind of the farm idea and how that relates to growing of faith, etc. And a couple of new programs with Matthew Bunson talking about his great book on the Pope, on Women of Grace as well, airing next week, and also Living Divine Mercy with a special 200th episode with Father Chris Alar.
Wow, 200th episode. Wow.
Yeah, so it goes quick, I tell you. It does go quick. So,
yeah,
again, check out EWTN.com. Look forward to, on Roku, our new version of our kind of moving from the on-demand to the plus concept, which is a lot more flexibility, a lot more programming, hopefully a lot more excitement will be gained, reaching more people, which is what the goal is. And, so there's a lot going on at EWTN. Check out EWTN.com. Check out our on-demand platform, like I said. But especially also look for our wonderful Podcast Central, which we keep adding some great podcasts, and the best of EWTN and the best of the rest.
Hey, and guess what? I have some good news to tell you. You're probably already aware of this, but I'm going to say it anyway. The Saints in Italy series that we did with EWTN Mission Advancement, as of last week, we're well over 5,000 who've signed up for it. So I thought that was a pretty good number, right?
That's a very good number. That's great.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks.
Congratulations.
Well, congratulations to the Mission Advancement team. And I was talking yesterday about their incredible newsletters that they put out, the e-blast, where and this is another outlet of ours, right, where they put this summary together and you can find out about a saint, and it's so easy to learn, and it's all in one place. And I think with the new technology, as you were mentioning, Doug, this is, I think, where we've really, honed in on these different outlets and these different ways to communicate the gospel. And we have to be there, right?
Absolutely. We have to be everywhere. That's what Mother always said years ago when she first went on cable, and and people said, well, you're launching, and by then we had launched Playboy Channel. You're on with Playboy and HBO and these other terrible channels, and Mother said,
right,
we have to be there. We have to be there in
right.
opposition to we can't cede the ground to Satan, so to speak. We have to be there to offer the truth and the light of the alternative, to be there. And that's why we need to be EWTN everywhere. We need to be EWTN everywhere, available through your smart TV or on your iPad or on your phone, or however, on whatever format that's out there, quite on Instagram, TikTok, etc. Some of them are pretty nasty things, but unfortunately, whether we like it or not, a lot of young people are on those things. And if we want to reach some of them, especially people who are searching, let alone the lost, we really have to make sure our material's out there, and at least making people aware of where the truth can be found. Nobody can force anybody to do anything. Our Lord gave us free will, and Mother always said that. It's our job to put it out there. It's the Holy Spirit's job to convert people.
Yeah, because I know you have a whole, the network has so many stories of how people just happen to be, flipping through the channels and come across Mother Angelica or another program. Doug, thanks so much, and happy semi-retirement, but we're so glad you're going to be joining us on Fridays, as usual, for our Inside Word. Have a happy 4th of July. More Catholic Connection coming your way on a Friday. Happy 4th. Stay tuned. Welcome back, Catholic Connection on a Friday. Happy 4th. Hope you're having a great 4th of July weekend. Special edition of Catholic Connection on the holiday. Yesterday, as you could say, we really started our discussion with Father Mitch Pacwa on our Cultural Connection segment with him, as we always do on Thursdays, where we talked about the Founding Fathers and freedom, the First Amendment. So I want to dive a little bit more deeply in this Fact Check Friday into the First Amendment, because there's a lot of confusion about it, and I don't even think the media and those in the media, and I know because I worked in it, in the secular media for 20 plus years, understand what the First Amendment means. They hide behind the First Amendment, and they know that there was a Supreme Court case many, many years ago that had to deal with public officials that makes it very, very difficult for public officials. And a public official does have a pretty wide definition. It could be a politician, it could be somebody in the public eye in general, but they hide behind that. Now, I know we live in an overly litigious society, and I don't like to see everything having to go to the courts. But when you have a media that is so totally irresponsible that they go as far as altering an interview and editing an answer of the candidate that they support so that candidate sounds better and more informed on an issue, sorry, that's not journalism. That's activism and advocacy. And so with the recent settlement from CBS, and that's what I'm talking about in that particular case, regarding the Kamala Harris interview that was edited, it's a victory in the sense that CBS has now agreed that they are going to be releasing transcripts, which they fought for a long time on that interview because they knew that they could get caught with their, red-handed. And they're going to put it out there so people can see it. The head of CBS actually stepped down when they had a settlement with Trump because she was very upset. But the bottom line is The First Amendment does not give the media carte blanche to do whatever they want, and they hide behind this. But hopefully cases like the settlement with CBS and Donald Trump, the settlement with Donald Trump and George Stephanopoulos from ABC, the settlement from a man, a private citizen from CNN, a big chunk of money, went after his reputation. Nicholas Salmon, you remember his case many years ago? The young student, pro-life student, high school student, simply waiting for a bus after participating in the March for Life, and all of a sudden he's the worst person in the world. And his family literally had to go into hiding. His reputation as a young man was ruined, and he's still struggling with it this day. But he did win some settlements against some of the media. There are some cases involving him that are still going on. But freedom of speech is not absolute and does have limitations. You could just Google this, okay? 5 common limitations include defamation, false statements that harm someone's reputation, incitement to violence, speech that is likely to cause imminent lawless action. There's a reason why they say you can't yell fire in a theater, because that would cause chaos. I mean, that's a kind of a cliche, kind of a saying, but you get the picture. Obscenity, threats, statements that communicate a serious intent to commit violence, fighting words, words that are likely to provoke an immediate violent reaction. But let's take a look at defamation again. This involves making false statements about someone that harm their reputation. It can be further divided into libel, written defamation, and slander, spoken defamation. Okay? So these are just a few examples that there are limits when it comes to the First Amendment. And when this decision came out in terms of this settlement regarding CBS and the way they falsely edited the Kamala Harris interview before the election, because they didn't think the answer that she gave originally in that sit-down interview was the best to help her reputation, they actually took a soundbite from another interview and put it in the 60 Minutes presentation. Basically lying to the American people and making her think she said something that she did not in that particular interview. You cannot do that. That is not journalism. That is activism and advocacy. So Trump's team sued. And again, I am not thinking that the best way to solve everything is through the courts, but when you have a media that is so reckless, this is the same media that told us Joe Biden was fine. This is the same media that didn't question Karine Jean-Pierre, the former White House press secretary, who now basically is writing a book about Biden, and she's leaving the Democratic Party all of a sudden. And then you have all these people such as Jake Tapper, okay, who I gave him credit. I'll be giving him credit in the next hour, because there is a decent interview he actually did with a parent from Maryland regarding that case that we'll be talking about in the LGBTQ agenda. So I will give credit where credit is due. But overall, what we're seeing are a media that have been complicit in working with particular agendas to put them forward, the agendas that they strongly support, including the previous president in the White House, Joe Biden. They're acting now as if they knew nothing. And, oh, it's all Jill Biden's fault. It's all her fault. It's not our fault. They didn't tell us this. Well, if you believe that, as George Strait used to say, I have some oceanfront property in Arizona I'd like you to see. So the media, I hope, are learning that they are not untouchable. And this is important for our freedoms. Okay? What's interesting and why it's so important sometimes to take it this far, if you can, and Trump obviously has the means to do so, because there are two agendas, I think, that are equal in the media, and this has been my experience. You've heard the old saying, money talks. Agenda is very, very important to the media, such as the liberal agenda. They're very pro-abortion. They're very pro-so-called same-sex marriage. They're very pro-trans. This is not something that I'm making up. The statistics are there. And my first book, Noise, documents a lot of this. Okay? But this is something that the media are very, very involved in terms of pushing forth particular agendas. And so they need to be taken to task for this. And if you can go and do a lawsuit and bring this out, not for the money, Trump doesn't need the money, but to help people understand what is going on here. Again, this is the same media who told us that, okay, Biden's fine. Everything's fine. And anyone who disagrees, you're the one with the problem. I mean, how much gaslighting did they do during COVID, during the pandemic? And now they're even admitting the Wuhan lab theory was true. The same media, okay? And yet, last year, leading up to the election, lie after lie after lie, and even editing of interviews to make their candidate of choice sound better than she really was. They wanted to help her get elected, Kamala Harris. The CBS parent company Paramount, and this is the story we're talking about, settled their own non-defamation related case to the tune of $16 million upfront, with it possibly reaching upwards of $30 million. The CBS settlement, and this is according to the Media Research Center's Newsbusters, also reportedly resulted, and this is key, an editorial change at the network in which they will promptly, as I mentioned, release full and unedited transcripts of future interviews with presidential candidates. Now, this writer says Nicholas Sandmann seems to be the beginning of the dam breaking apart. After far-left radical protesters assailed him and his Covington classmates in front of the Lincoln Memorial after the annual March for Life in 2019, multiple news outlets targeted the child and smeared him as a racist and lied about him not allowing those assailing him to retreat. Nicholas Sandmann broke the dam, and hopefully these other lawsuits are helping the media realize, and maybe they need to take a history course, what the First Amendment is all about. And it's not about freedom to do anything you want. You have a responsibility, and it's about time they lived up to it. We'll be right back. Sometimes when these secular studies come out that prove what the Catholic Church and our Lord and Mother Mary has been saying forever, I kind of envision, but God would never do this because he's all merciful and all loving. Don't tell me I told you so, but I told you so. So there's this really interesting story that came out recently about the efficacy of the Rosary. And the other important point in that study is the fact that there are all kinds of stereotypes about people who pray the Rosary prior to this new research coming out. So the stereotype is, it's, uneducated religious people, religious zealots who know nothing about their faith, and they're just, pinning their hopes on, a bunch of beads. And yet you find out in the research that a lot of very smart people are praying the Rosary, including people with master's degrees or beyond. To discuss this, someone who knows all about the efficacy of the Rosary, our good friend, Father Donald Calloway. You know him as well from his books and his many talks and his ministry. He is amazing. And of course, he's a promoter of the Divine Mercy message, and we love that as well. Father, great to talk with you. How are you?
Hey, good to talk to you too. Yeah, I'm doing very good. Thank you.
Long time no talk to. So I immediately thought of you because I know your connection to Our Lady and the impact that she had on your life and your reversion to and conversion to the Catholic faith. So I'm just going to read just a little bit about this story. Basically, the Rosary, actually, they showed in this study that it is extremely efficacious in terms of calming people down and opening them up to faith and just to a better way of life. I'll get into some of the details in the study a little bit later. But when you saw the story, what was your first reaction to it?
It's funny. I mean, I'm such a guy, so my first reaction was like, duh, right? Of course. It's like, we know this. The devout Catholics know this. The saints know this. The popes know this. And so I'm glad that everybody else is finally catching up.
Yeah.
We know this,
What did you think in terms of how they were talking about the people and the stereotypes that were usually, it's the old people, it's the people who don't have any education, they don't know what they're doing?
Yeah, unfortunately, they got that kind of right in the sense that a lot of people unfortunately do think that today, right? They think, the Rosary, that's something my grandma does, or that's something a sister does in a convent or something. But that's not true, actually. It's for everyone, and you don't have to have, know 12 languages to pray it. It's the basics. And from a child to, any culture on any continent, everybody can do it. And so, yeah, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So we need to kind of turn that around to get people to realize, no, it's for everyone, and it's okay to do it. It's wonderful to do it.
Yeah. Let me read just a little bit of information about this. Research shows that praying the rosary correlated positively with reduced depression and increased optimism about the future, and higher levels of rosary prayer correlated with increased empathy, which I think is huge. In an era where mindfulness apps dominate smartphones and meditation studios populate urban corners, a new groundbreaking international study suggests the ancient Catholic prayer practice of praying the rosary may offer comparable mental health benefits to Eastern-inspired meditation techniques. The research, published in the Journal of Religion and Health, and by the way, you can find this article on the Register, also challenges assumptions made about traditional practices such as the rosary, revealing surprising insights about who is actually praying the rosary in 2025. Researchers from Italy, Poland, and Spain surveying 361 practicing Catholics to assess the impact of praying the rosary on well-being and mental health. They found that participants who prayed the rosary reported higher levels of well-being, increased empathy, and significantly lower levels of religious struggle or spiritual anxiety. Wow. While research has shown can be benefits of other meditation techniques. So let's talk about this. What has Our Lady been telling us, Father, about the rosary over the centuries?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mention Our Lady because, in all of the approved apparitions of Our Lady, the most constant theme that she is asking of the visionaries and to the whole world is to pray the rosary. And she's our mother. She knows best. She wants us to be happy. She wants us to be healthy. And, this is a vocal and mental prayer, so it's meditation. And we're meditating upon the mysteries of Christ. And that's what Our Lady would want for us, for her spiritual children. And that's gonna bring us, so many benefits, spiritually, but even as this study is showing, physically. I mean, it calms your heart rate. It gives you peace. It makes you, as you said, more empathetic. It makes you more loving and all of that. And who doesn't want that? Who doesn't need that? So I think Our Lady's telling us, look, the world will be a better place if you listen to what I'm telling you. Pray the rosary. Meditate upon these mysteries of Jesus.
I had the same reaction. I guess it's because I'm a cynical, curmudgeon journalist from way back. But I'm like, duh. But again, I have God and Mama Mary saying, don't say we told you so. But I mean, it's so obvious. The more we see this, and the other thing I thought about, Father, too. And by the way, we're talking with the amazing Father Don Calloway. It really doesn't need an introduction, but we'll give you some background in a minute. I thought about all the people coming into the Catholic Church this year. Thousands in the United States. We had almost 2,000 in the Archdiocese of Detroit. Great Britain, which is one of the most persecuted countries in terms of Christianity. Remember that woman who was praying outside the abortion mill silently? Yeah. And the police said, "Are you praying?" "I may be praying inside my head." And she gets arrested not once but twice. And in France as well. And so it is this tradition, this beautiful prayer. People are searching for this.
Mm-hmm. They are, and I think that's something beautiful, is rediscovering the piety of our ancestors, the piety of what your great-grandmother used to do. And I'm sure it got her through very tough times. I mean, so many of them lived through world wars and so many difficulties, and they maintained that peace, and they carried on the faith to the next generation. And I think it's time for now the young ones especially to take up these great devotions, the Rosary, the Chaplet, and so many others, to enter into that and benefit from that. It's going to do them good. It's going to do the family good. It's going to do society good, your parish, your diocese, your workplace, everything. There's so many things that will benefit from the Rosary.
Can we talk, Father, a little bit about what the Rosary is in terms of, it really is a meditation. You mentioned it briefly in the beginning. It is a meditation on the life of Christ and the Gospels,
that's right.
Basically.
So, yeah, it comes right out of the New Testament, too. That's the amazing thing, because sometimes there's people who don't understand it, and they think, oh, that's just something Catholics made up, and it's silly repetition. Well, no, it's in the New Testament, so we're praying the Word of God, right? And St. Paul says the Word of God has power. It never goes out and doesn't reap fruit. It's the Word of God. And so when we pray those prayers and meditate upon it, there's going to be tremendous fruit. And I love this, people like Venerable Fulton Sheen and others have said, every time you say those prayers, it's not just a crazy repetition, because our Lord said, don't just repeat words if they're meaningless. Well, these aren't meaningless words. These are from the Bible. And so we're basically saying to God and to Our Lady, our spiritual mother, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, every time we say the Hail Mary and are meditating. And what mother doesn't want to hear that? Jesus wants to hear that from us. And so he's not going to be offended and say, hey, stop saying that. No, of course not. But if we have love in our hearts, we're meditating upon these mysteries, it's basically just, I call every Hail Mary a butterfly kiss to heaven, because we get distracted, right? Yeah, I mean, I've never prayed a perfect rosary. I don't have angelic precision to, just focus on one thing for a long period of time. I get distracted like everybody else. The saints did too. But that's the butterfly kiss, right, that you give to your parents. And they'll take every single one of them, even if they're distracted. Little kisses, they'll take every one. So don't be discouraged if you're listening to this and you think, I don't pray it well. Well, that's all right. Most of us don't. But love perseveres, and parents love those little butterfly kisses. So let's keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when our mother, our Mary keeps telling us and keeps reminding us. And she is such a good mom, because I can remember my mom telling me things over and over again to get me to listen. And Mary knows this. And as you said earlier, Father, all the approved apparitions, what do we see Mary with? The Rosary. What is she telling us? The Rosary. Go back to my son, go back to Mass, pray the Rosary, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's exactly right. And, you've seen it too throughout history. Whenever there's, some conflict in the world, or there's a particular nation maybe where there's some ideology that's threatening to take over, a leader has just, gone completely crazy. Well, time and time again, you see groups that rise up, not with arms, not with violence, but by praying the Rosary. And what happens? Peace comes back, and these regimes are overthrown, and by peaceful means. And I mean, it's incredible. If you read about, somebody's got to write a book just on that, about how the Rosary in so many countries has helped to overcome these kind of issues in a peaceful way, and restored, society. It's tremendous. I mean, it's a book waiting to be written. It really is.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're talking with Father Donald Calloway. He's a Catholic priest, obviously, author, known for a very dramatic conversion story. He works, of course, on Marian themes. He's a member of the Congregation of Marian Fathers of the Immaculate Conception and serving as a vicar provincial and vocation director for the Marian Fathers. Father, why do you think they got away from the Rosary so many years ago? I mean, when we were growing up, I don't understand that. What did those who pushed, especially those who were seeking vocations, those who are in the seminary, saying, oh, Rosary, we don't do that anymore? What do you think happened?
Yeah, it is unfortunate, that's for sure. I don't know. I mean, there's probably a lot of causes, but I think, the 60s and 70s, there was just a lot of worldliness creeping into the life of the church, into even, unfortunately, seminaries and convents and all of those things. And I think that people just thought, well, you know what? We're modern now. We've got science, and we've got this, and we've got that. And so they started to ditch some of these practices. But look what happened. I mean, so much, just things happen in society to break down the family and break down order. And now, interestingly enough, as we're talking about, in a journal of, religion and health and scientific studies, they're saying, you know what? This actually, maybe we shouldn't have got rid of these things. There's benefits here that help everyone. So whatever the many causes are and were, I think now we're realizing, you know what, we shouldn't have jettisoned these things. They really did do great good.
Of course, we're chatting with Father Donald Calloway. And Father, before we let you go, I have about 2 minutes left. So there's so much else I want to talk to you about. We have to have you back on because it's been a while. What are you working on right now? Do you have a new book coming out? What's going on with Father Calloway?
Yeah, so I'm working on 4 books at the moment. I don't recommend that,
4?
by the way. I know, it's crazy. I'm
at the same time?
Sure. Yeah, it's nuts.
What are you, bilocating now? I don't get it. What's going on?
I don't have that gift, but so I'm actually working on another one on the Rosary. It's about St. Dominic and the Rosary. Yeah, so, and then a book on martyrs and a book on St. Joseph again. So got that going on. And then, I'm always doing pilgrimages. So I just got back from Italy, and I know you love Italy. And I'm doing pilgrimages like 3 or 4 a year now. I love doing those, meeting great people and just going to all those holy shrines. And then I've got the vocation work for our community. We have 21 seminarians, and we have another 9 entering next month. It's amazing.
Wow.
So praise God.
Wow. And you know what? We have a lot to thank, of course, obviously God, but his Mama Mary helping him with that, I'm sure, right? So what's the best?
They're all Marian.
Yeah, exactly. What is the best place to find you online, Father?
Yeah, so my website is fathercalloway.com, and you have to spell out the father part, so fathercalloway.com. You'll see all the books, all the pilgrimages, and all that good stuff there.
Okay, Father, God love you. Great to catch up, and thanks for your insight on the Rosary. Listen
Thank
to
you.
your
God bless
mother, right? As Mother Mary, as in Mother Mary.
Amen.
We'll be right back on Catholic Connection. Stay tuned. I love the music for the 4th of July. My father used to wake me and my sisters up with the marches from John Philip Sousa. And every time 4th of July rolls around, I think of my dad who loved music. God bless America. Get out there and enjoy it. But don't forget to take the Lord with you and take us with you as well. Coming up in the second hour of Catholic Connection, which will be on EWTN Radio Extra, of course, we are going to be taking a look in our 2 cents segment. First up, with a recent decision that came out about a week ago, this is such good news for parents, not just in the state of Maryland, but everywhere. We're going to take a look at the Maryland schools and how they were defeated at the High Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, when they tried to pull a fast one on parents, first saying that parents would be notified and allow for the children to opt out when it came to them introducing just some very, very inappropriate and totally over-sexualized material to children as young as 3 years old. And then they switched it and said, oh no, we're not only not going to allow you not to opt out, but we're not going to tell you when we are bringing these materials into the classroom. And it wasn't about just reading books. That would be bad enough. There were discussions. They would ask children questions about what are your pronouns and do a certain search on the internet for particular words pertaining to sexuality. Totally out of control. Now, parents from all different religions, Christian, evangelical religions, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, got together and sued. They lost in the first round, but won from the High Court. We'll discuss that. And then we're going to hear a beautiful pro-life testimony from Father Shenan Boquet on what they're doing to stand up against all the attacks on life. He was in studio recently, and we sat down with him, and we're sharing that interview with you again. Coming up on a Friday morning, a special edition for 4th of July. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And again, happy 4th of July. You're listening to hour number 2, a very special edition brought to you by our friends at EWTN and my wonderful production team. We didn't want to leave you without a show today because it's an important holiday, so we have really interesting topics to talk about this hour, as we did last hour in the first hour of Catholic Connection on this July 4th, 2025. Can you believe it is the 4th of July already? When did that happen? Seems like we were just talking about the Memorial Day weekend, and here we are. Now, I want you to do something for me, brothers and sisters. I don't know if you heard the interview I did yesterday with my friend Chuck Gatica about the connection between health, wellness, faith, well-being. Make sure you try to unplug a little bit. Of course, you can take us with you. Listening to Catholic radio should be very calming and soothing. But, you have to unplug from everything every once in a while. So give yourself a chance to slow down and do, as my paisans say here in Italy, learn the art of doing nothing, right? La dolce far niente. And live, right? La dolce vita, the sweet life, with your family, with your friends. Go to Mass, pray for our country, pray for our leaders, pray for priests, pray for the military. Thank God for our military. Those are the things you need to be doing this weekend, including, of course, having a nice, relaxing picnic or some time with your family and friends. And I was talking with Chuck Gatica yesterday. Again, he's a health and wellness coach, chuckgatica.com, about how sometimes, Americans, we feel this, and I know because my husband and I are still learning to slow down here in Italy. We think, okay, we've got time off. We've got a few days. I can get so much done. As opposed to thinking in the opposite way, now I have some more time, some more downtime where I can make a reconnection with my family, and most importantly, a reconnection with God. So just something to think about as we continue in this 4th of July weekend. We'll have the weather for you and the news in a minute, but do want to tell you what's coming up on this hour of Catholic Connection, again here on EWTN Radio Extra. We're going to be taking a look at this very important decision from the High Court that came out about a week ago regarding the Maryland schools and how they have to allow parents to opt out of classes that are pushing the LGBTQ agenda to children as young as 3 and 4 years old. And not just giving them books to read or picture books or whatever, but having discussions in the classroom. So what they're doing, and even for special needs children, wait till you hear the interview that we're going to run with this Catholic mom who has a special needs daughter who was being exposed to this. And she said, basta, enough. And she joined a number of parents from all different religions that stood up and said no. And they took it all the way to the Supreme Court and won. And then we're going to hear a beautiful pro-life message from our friend, Father Shenan Boquet from Human Life International. Let's take a look at the weather, giving you an idea of what you're in for this weekend. Well, 4th of July festivities, especially in the South and Florida, the Southeast, are going to be erupted by rainy weather. Florida already seeing showers and thunderstorms this week. It's due to a possible tropical system in the Atlantic that has a medium chance of developing over the next week. Now, even if there's not a tropical development, the rainy weather is expected to persist into next weekend. The rest of the country, they're saying, for the most part, will have decent weather. Rome 25, the Way of St. James, Santiago de Compostela 27, Jerusalem 33. It's a long name, but it is the name of a project that was created by a group of young people and presented this week at a briefing at the Holy See Press Office as part of a manifesto of young Christians in Europe. The Vatican says the initiative involves pilgrimages, evangelization, and healing to restore the soul of Europe, rekindling the hope so often lost, as stated by Pope Francis. Those involved, according to the Vatican, aim to tell the world that everyone can reconnect with beauty and truth and love of Christ, especially when it's difficult in times of trouble and struggles. The 2024 report on Peter's Pence just released showing an increase in donations supporting the Pope's mission. The annual fund bringing in donations for the Pope's mission for the Universal Church, raising €58 million in 2024. That's an increase from €52 million back in 2023. A total of €13.3 million funding 239 direct assistance projects in 66 countries around the world. The Catholic Conference of Wisconsin decrying yesterday's decision from the Wisconsin Supreme Court upholding a lower court ruling that allows abortions to continue in the state, despite a long-standing near-total abortion ban still on the books. The conference saying in a statement it's nonsensical for the court majority to pretend that Wisconsin's long-standing abortion ban was impliedly repeated by previous legislatures. For 175 years, everyone in the state, supporters and opponents alike, understood that the law and its subsequent amendment reflected the legislature's intent that abortion should remain illegal. Well, the 4th of July travel period in full swing. AAA is predicting over 72 million people are venturing out at least 50 miles from home over this Independence holiday period. It began on June 28th and it goes through July 6th. That's an additional 1.3 million road travelers compared to 2024. It also says 5.84 million will be flying to their destination, and that's also a new record. Meanwhile, here's some good news. Average gas prices are down as people hit the road for the 4th of July. AAA reporting the average price of a gallon is $3.16. That's a little higher than a month ago, but about 35 cents cheaper than this time last year. Prices are highest in California, where the cost averages $4.56 a gallon, and cheapest in Mississippi at $2.70. Federal officials are warning of lone wolves who pose the biggest terror threat during holiday celebrations amid tensions between the U.S. and the Middle East. Tensions escalating on June 22nd when the U.S. bombed nuclear sites in Iran, according to the Trump administration officials. The Department of Homeland Security said the agency is working closely with the FBI and other federal, state, and local law enforcement partners to ensure a safe and secure Independence Day across the country. According to the statement, the DHS said, "We are enhancing security measures and coordinating intelligence sharing to proactively address potential risks, including those from lone wolf actors." At this time, they said DHS is not aware of any specific or credible threats for 4th of July celebrations this weekend. Meanwhile, medical and safety experts are looking to raise awareness about the dangers of fireworks. Dr. Michael Lakawa of UCI Health in Southern California says he treated one little boy who lost 3 fingers on one hand, but also suffered injuries to his stomach, colon, and small bowel.
There are certain types of fireworks that are essentially loaded with types of gunpowder that explode. They're like small pieces of dynamite, and they cause an explosion which has a wave of energy that passes through your body.
That child has now recovered. Last year, there were more than 14,000 fireworks-related injuries reported in the U.S., most of them involving hands, head, and ears. 11 people were killed. The Consumer Product Safety Commission reminding folks to never let children play with fireworks, to keep a bucket of water or a hose close by in case of a fire, and carefully follow instructions on packaging when handling fireworks. Andrew Whitman tells us today a state judge in New York is ordering New York State prisons to fully implement a new law cutting back on how long inmates can be kept in solitary confinement.
The State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision suspended the new rules under emergency provisions during the informal prison guard strike earlier this year. The judge Wednesday ruled the department couldn't do that and ordered the new policy be in place by July 11th. That new law, the Halt Solitary Confinement Act, limits how long any inmate can be kept in solitary and bans solitary for inmates considered vulnerable, including people under 21 or over 55 and the disabled. Andrew Whitman, NBC News Radio, New York.
Funeral plans for televangelist Jimmy Swaggart are set. He died earlier this week in Louisiana at the age of 90. There will be a public viewing at the Family Worship Center in Baton Rouge 1 week from Saturday. Services will be next Sunday, a week from this Sunday. And exposure to air pollution, other contaminants, and traditional herbal medicines may be contributing to the development of lung cancer in non-smokers. That's according to a study published in Nature, that these substances can be linked to the same genetic mutations that are associated with smoking and that promote lung cancer development. Scientists finding that more air pollution a person endured, the more tumors were found in their lungs. Tammy Trujillo tells us today that Qantas Airlines says a cyber attack has exposed the data of 6 million of its customers.
The Australian airline says it detected unusual activity Monday on a platform that stored millions of names, phone numbers, email addresses, and birth dates. Qantas says it's still investigating the full extent of the breach, but that it expects a significant amount of data was stolen. The airline claims that no personal financial data, like passport and credit card numbers, was accessed. The attack came just days after the FBI issued an alert saying that airlines were being targeted by a cyber crime group called Scattered Spider. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
In Flint, Michigan, the city there finishing its lead service pipe replacement effort 11 years after the city's lead-tainted water crisis became national news. Nearly 11,000 pipes are replaced. The water crisis began in 2014 when the state-appointed emergency management managers switched Flint's water supply from the Detroit supplied system to the Flint River to save money, but did not treat the water to prevent corrosion. The city was then sued by residents and nonprofits back in 2017 and agreed to a settlement to replace all lead pipes. Brian Shook tells us Microsoft is laying off thousands of employees in its latest round of cuts.
The move is expected to impact less than 4% of its global workforce across different teams. The software company has held several rounds of layoffs already this year, including in May when it announced layoffs of around 6,000 workers. Microsoft reportedly is looking to reduce the layers of managers that stand between individual contributors and top executives. I'm Brian Shook.
And the Pittsburgh International Airport needs volunteers to take part in a dress rehearsal ahead of its new terminal opening. The airport is looking for 3,000 to 4,000 volunteers who will reenact what the opening day of the new terminal will look like in an effort to have a smooth first day of the terminal once it opens. The volunteers will act as passengers and will follow scripts as they move together through the terminal. And taking a look at the weekend, Jurassic World Rebirth is on track to rule the box office over the holiday.
I can guarantee your safety. I mean, more or less. More or less?
The latest entry into the dinosaur franchise brought people out for the theaters on Wednesday for a projected opening day gross of $28 million. It's expected to make nearly $130 million over the long holiday weekend. Jurassic World Rebirth stars Scarlett Johansson as a dinosaur hunter, and it sets up a new series of Jurassic Park movies. So far, the franchise has made over, get this, $6 billion worldwide since the first Jurassic Park came out in the early 90s. Appreciate your listenership today and every day. When we come back on Catholic Connection on EWTN's Radio Extra, taking a look at that very, very important case, the one involving the Maryland schools, and how parents stood up and said, no, you're not going to teach my children that. And if you do, I have the right as a parent to be involved and to opt them out. We'll be right back on a Friday. Stay tuned. Welcome back, Catholic Connection. Great to be with you on a Friday morning, and it's our 2 cents segment. It's wishing you a beautiful 4th of July weekend, and remember, we have a little break maybe, or a little bit of a vacation, but we never take a vacation from God, especially here at EWTN, because we are defenders of the faith and do our best to do so every single day. Holidays and beyond, and regular Monday through Friday, every day of the week, actually. Well, we're talking about freedom. Yesterday, we started the discussion with Father Mitch Pacwa on our Cultural Connections. On a Thursday, he joins us every week. And I wanted to dive in more deeply because this case actually was affirmed and happened. The decision happened with the Supreme Court when I was off for a few days, taking a brief vacation in southern Italy. But it's such an important story. And it ties right in with Religious Freedom Week and our efforts to understand our true freedoms in this country as Americans and especially as people of faith. So this is a case where the schools in Maryland were basically trying to force and indoctrinate young children with the extreme left, gay, and trans agenda. And all parents were asking for is the right to opt out. And first, Maryland schools said, okay, you can opt out. Then they said no. And so they went to court. So let me first read the statement from Bishop Rhodes. And Bishop Rhodes is with the USCCB and the Religious Freedom Commission. Parents have a right to direct their children's education, especially regarding subjects that touch on faith and morals, says Bishop Kevin C. Rhodes, chair of the U.S. Congress of Catholic Bishops Committee on Religious Liberty, following the 6-3 decision of the Supreme Court of the U.S. in Mahmoud versus Taylor. And he gave the following statement. Public schools in our diverse country include families from many communities with a variety of deep-seated convictions about faith and morals. When these schools address issues that touch on these matters, they ought to respect all families. Parents should not forfeit their rights, as primary educators of their children when they send their children to public schools. The parents in Montgomery County did not seek to impose their religious viewpoints on others. They simply asked to opt out of a program that was offensive to their faith. To be sure, the bishop said, children should not be learning that their personal identity as male or female can be separated from their bodies. But if a public school chooses to offer these kinds of programs, it ought to respect those who choose not to participate. The school board was wrong to interfere with the rights of parents. And Bishop Rhodes says, I'm grateful the Supreme Court has moved to rectify the injustice. Okay. So a little bit more on what happened before we roll an interview. And kudos to Jake Tapper at CNN for giving a Maryland parent, one of those involved in the lawsuit, a Catholic woman, the chance to express her concerns and her happiness over this Supreme Court victory. The Supreme Court's 6-3 decision in Mahmoud versus Taylor is a landmark gender ideology indoctrination case, addressed parental rights and religious liberty in public education. The case challenging a Maryland school board policy requiring elementary students to take part in gender ideology lessons without parental notice or opt-out options. And by the way, I'm reading a story from the Baptist Press. It placed a burden on families' deeply held religious beliefs. The ruling is an unequivocal affirmation that public schools must respect families' religious convictions and cannot condition access to education on surrender of these beliefs. The Ethics and Religious Commission filed a brief supporting the petitioners back in October. After the Supreme Court granted the case hearing, they filed an additional brief outlining why the court should rule for the parents. Here are some of the highlights. The fundamental right of parents, to direct the upbringing of the education of their children, the importance of religious liberty, the role of the Free Exercise Clause in protecting parents from governmental compelled ideological indoctrination, and the necessity of ensuring that public schools respect the diverse religious beliefs of families in their communities. In 2022, the Montgomery County Board of Education introduced a new policy requiring the use of storybooks and discussion guides that promote radical gender ideology in elementary school classrooms, including for children as young as 3. These books encourage students to discuss what it means to be non-binary and ask 4-year-old researchers or 4-year-olds to search for underwear, intersex flags, and drag queens in a Where's Waldo style book. At issue, initially the school board indicated parents could opt their children out. I mentioned this earlier, based on their religious or moral objections, but the board later reversed its position, deciding that parents would no longer be notified when these materials, not even notified when they were used in class, and would not be allowed to opt their children out because it was too burdensome for the school. In other words, this was all about indoctrination, brothers and sisters. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the parents, and here is a portion of an interview after the decision came down several days ago of one of the Catholic parents who was involved in the lawsuit. And again, give credit where credit is due. She was given ample time to explain the reality behind this decision on CNN, no less. Take a listen.
Talk now with one of the parents who first brought this case in Montgomery County, Maryland, Mom Grace Morrison. Her attorney Michael O'Brien joins us as well. So Grace, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Montgomery County first removed the opt-out choice in 2023. You're a mom of public school kids in Montgomery County. Why did you bring this case?
I brought this case because my husband and I have an adopted daughter from Ukraine. She had been in the public school system for 7 years. She is a child with special needs. She has Down syndrome. And we became aware that in her special needs classroom, they were presenting books on sexuality and heavy topics of gender ideology. And we became very alarmed by this. Then to find out that we could no longer opt out of these materials, nor be even informed of what she was being taught. The books were being presented and discussed. So we had to make the very difficult decision to remove her from the school system, and that came at a great personal cost, and we have been walking through this case. So today we are really rejoicing to have those, by the Supreme Court, to have those rights restored.
So how much of this was because of your child's special needs, and how much was it because of whatever religious objections you and your husband might have?
For our family, this material was directly opposed to our religious beliefs. We are Catholic, and the things that were being presented were in complete conflict with our Catholic faith, and we were raising our daughter in the Catholic faith. So it was especially difficult for a child with special needs to not be able to understand why the teacher was teaching one thing and then to come home and be told something else. It just added another level of difficulty.
So I'm going to put up some of the books now. Let's show them if we can. One is about a puppy lost at a pride parade. One is about a girl attending her uncle's wedding to his partner, his male partner. Another one is about a young person discovering that they are trans. These are storybooks. Now, obviously, your child has specific learning needs that you were concerned about. Let's broaden it out for a second, if we could. We just heard Cecilia Wong from the ACLU say these books are about teaching tolerance and acceptance. Why is that a bad thing? That's basically the argument we just heard from Cecilia Wong.
Well, the first thing is that it wasn't just a simple reading of storybooks. It was presented in her language arts class, so it involved discussion and instruction. And if you look at the court documents, the school itself was showing how this was a one-sided approach in the discussion. So it was opposed to our religious beliefs. And again, this case was not about removing these materials. It was about giving parents the right to decide, to know what was being presented, and then have the right to decide. So we were really just asking to have what has been in place in the state of Maryland to be restored. And that is what the Supreme Court granted today.
Grace Morrison, alongside her attorney, Michael O'Brien, thanks to you. Appreciate your time today.
Unbelievable. But thanks be to God, because of the way our system is set up and the fact that we have access to bring these issues forward in the courts, we can change. You know, there were so many different religions that were involved in this case because they spoke up and said, enough. You will not take over the education of my children, especially when it comes to things that violate my faith. We'll be right back. It's the bottom of the hour on a Wednesday. Great to be with you. Second hour of Catholic Connection. It's June 4th, 2025, and great to have Father Shenan Boquet with us from Human Life International, who's in studio. EWTN. Hey, Father, how are you?
Hey, Teresa. Great to be with you. It's always.
And you know what? It's nice. It's warm. You're in Irondale. I'm in Italy, and we're both in very comfortable temperatures and not in the freezing cold.
Oh, wow. I just returned from Italy just a few days ago.
Oh, good for you. I'm assuming you were in Rome.
I was in Rome, and also pretty much across the country. I was there during the time of the conclave, and was there when our Holy Father emerged from the loggia. And then about a week later, I met up with a group of Catholic Daughters of the Americas for a pilgrimage in Italy, a Eucharistic pilgrimage. So
I love them. They're always on with me too. I've spoken at their events. They're terrific. Well, we're happy that you're in studio. I know you're taping some shows. Tell us about your time at EWTN and what you'll be doing.
Oh, it's always a blessing to come back. I was just telling one of the EWTN employees, I've really been coming to EWTN since probably 1987, 88.
Wow.
And so I have a great love for the network and great love for the mission of the network. And Mother was a good friend and always very supportive of my priesthood. And so I've always really had a great joy of coming to the station. And so this time, I was actually traveling, and when I got some invitations to join Father Mitch Pacwa on the program on EWTN Live tonight, and then had the invitation to join you today. And tomorrow I have some opportunity with Jonette with Women of Grace to do some taping episodes. And I think some of the Catholic radio is looking for me to maybe do a couple of more interviews later today. So,
well, I sure hope so.
They're going to maximize the time, so it's great.
Sure. Well, we can't let you, walk out without doing a number of interviews because you're such a great resource for us. And I love talking to you at the March for Life. But as I say, I'm very grateful that we're both in at least warm temperatures.
Yes.
I love covering the March for Life, but the cold sometimes can be a little bit difficult to deal with.
Exactly.
So what are your main topics that you're covering on the various shows, Father?
So tonight for EWTN Live, Father Pacwa and I are going to talk about depopulation, looking at, what often people call the demographic winter or the demographic bomb, looking at, U.S. policies, world policies that really sadly undermine the beauty of family life, the beauty of conjugal love, and the fruitfulness of that love, which are children. And sadly, with most of the world, especially the developed world, being below replacement level, the consequences of such decisions are going to be extremely harmful and detrimental to society. And it's important for us to really talk about these issues. And then also, what's the remedy? And obviously, we know the answer to that, and that is the family, how God designed it, and really encouraging couples. And I know tonight we're going to talk about, what can we do to encourage couples and support couples. And this is a part of the mission I do around the world, is working with couples. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Now, what do you think? Do you think we're getting the message about this? There seems to be a lot of emphasis. I know Pope Francis spoke a lot about this even before he passed away, about what's happening in Italy in terms of the low reproduction rates and the numbers there. Are people becoming more aware, do you think, Father?
I think that many people are talking. It's coming from the secular segment of society as well. I mean, when you hear people like Elon Musk, who would not necessarily share our Catholic or Christian principles, but looks at it from a business point of view, and what are the consequences when you have a lower population? And one thing that I think people are seeing is, how do you maintain your social structures? So here in the United States, for example, how do we maintain the things that we all take for granted that we use every day, our highways, water, from sewage, electricity, the various infrastructures that our taxes are paying. But when you have a smaller tax base because you have an aging population, the consequences are quite severe. And this is what we're seeing in states like California. We're seeing in other states that have promoted such kind of harsh environment for family life, looking more towards social means in the sense of providing, pretty much everything to people. But how do you pay for it? How do you pay for these structures? How do you pay for these services? Even to the point of medicine, how do we pay for health care? So these are very crucial issues that are now being raised by people in government, looking at policies. We see this on a global scale as well, where governments like Russia, for example, has been offering incentives to couples to welcome more children. Even the patriarch himself got involved in the conversation. We've seen the same thing in other countries, but it really hasn't had the impact. And so, and really it's because we have so convinced people that children are bad, family life is bad, it costs too much money. And yet what people don't realize is that these decisions all have consequences.
It's interesting. There was a new study that just came out about the mental health of moms, and I couldn't help but think, and I had Patty McGuire Armstrong with me discussing this. I just couldn't help but think if there is somewhat of an agenda underlining this, that, you're having these mental health problems because motherhood is a bad thing. I maybe I'm just a cynical reporter, but I've been covering the life issue for so long, and that's the agenda that they want to put out there, though, is it not?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've seen here in the U.S., remember, program after program on national TV, demeaning fatherhood, demeaning motherhood, looking at, if you welcome more than one or two children, you're doing something bad. You're not supporting the environment. You're causing harm to society. You're being selfish. All this has tremendous impact mentally, spiritually, and of course physically, and this is why the narrative has to change. And what we're doing here at EWTN and with your program, many others, obviously we're speaking to our own audience, but our audience needs now to take that message into the larger scene.
Exactly. I always say that, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? That old saying, practice, practice, practice. Even the choir needs practice,
Exactly.
And we're not just singing to the choir, right?
Right.
Father, stay tuned. We've got another segment with you. Can't wait, and so blessed to have you in studio with us, Father Shenan Boquet from Human Life International. We'll be right back. Having a very important conversation with our friend, Father Shenan Boquet from Human Life International. And by the way, he'll be continuing this conversation on a number of programs that he'll do live and also record as well as here at the EWTN studio. So, Father, we have this whole issue of the decline of population control, birth control, contraception. You and I were talking during the break, and I did my T's 2 cents segment earlier on this. This whole transgender agenda is just so dangerous. You have now a whole other group of people that are basically being sterilized. And so there you go. You're even declining the population even further.
Exactly. And this is something that, our audience may or may not be aware of, that, Planned Parenthood is very heavily involved in. Mm-hmm. And so because it's another means of not only of population control, but also it's a means of getting people on the particular drugs that they will have to take for their lifetime. Once you begin this regimen, there's no turning back from it, in a sense of your dependency upon it, to maintain the lifestyle that they have chosen. And so these are the kinds of things that it's great to hear right now within our legislative branch, looking at a current bill of defunding Planned Parenthood,
right.
and realizing that Planned Parenthood really does very little good to serve families, to serve life, to serve women, and especially to serve our young people now, sadly with this altering of drugs. And it's important for people to educate themselves themselves why we should be defunding Planned Parenthood, among many other organizations that are causing harm to our children and to people in general. So, the sad thing is, this is growing globally. This is I mean, when I travel, I see more and more of this issue rising. At the same time, I'm starting to see more pushback. And I think that the current administration, under the Trump administration, who is really kind of pointing out, the falsifications of this, is having a global impact. And they're seeing that, there's pushback. We see this in the UK, where there's been some pushback.
Yeah, I just mentioned that earlier. Yeah, with pushback. And then those whistleblowers who thought that they were doing the right thing by helping these young people do this so-called transitioning.
Right.
And then they realized that they were being lied to as professionals, because the big thing was it was like an assembly line, just like Planned Parenthood with abortion. Get them in and out quickly. Just get them the drugs, get them the abortion. No chance to think about it. Just get them in and not even sit down. And they promised all these psychological exams and counseling.
Exactly.
And nope. Get them on the drugs right away.
And it's a narrative. I mean, I think it's the same thing we saw with the contraceptive mentality. It's whoever controls the narrative controls the mind of people. So we know that the mainline media, legacy media, the whole entertainment industry, has been very, very keen in keeping this narrative. So as we said in the first segment, when you have programs that are demeaning fatherhood, demeaning motherhood, demeaning marriage, promoting, promiscuity, these things it's a narrative, and people hear it and see it. We see the same thing with the whole transgender ideology, that, just it's a narrative. And when it's pushed, and as we see, sadly, in the United States, on the previous policy, not only is it a narrative, but a forcible narrative.
The forcible narrative,
It's so aggressively pushed. And right now, during the month of June, a beautiful month of the Sacred Heart, I know I just released my article yesterday on the topic of the Sacred Heart, but also the issue of how some people want to celebrate, so-called Pride Month. And it was great to hear, Cardinal Leo of Toronto.
That was beautiful.
Call this out.
I read that yesterday. That was gorgeous.
I quoted him in my column, and I think it's very important that that we call this what it is, and that it's false. It's a false ideology. It's a false symbolism, and it demoralizes and diminishes human dignity. And so we need to call it what it is, and not participate in anything other than that which is truth. And I think that's the narrative that we have to take back, and also within our own pews. And as you said at the end of the last segment, that it is so true. We have to tune up our own organ and tune up our own guitars, and because sadly, even within our own congregations, there's a lot of confusion on these various subjects, and sadly, my brothers at times in the priesthood and those in the episcopacy don't always address these issues from the pulpits enough. Not talking about, because we in our pews is such a mix today of people living various lifestyles. And at times we're afraid to address it because of the response. But we should address, and we need to address, and we need to find a path to help our people to see the good, the true, and the beautiful, and to live in accord with God's design. And if that makes people sometimes uncomfortable, then so be it. But the end is to bring people to Christ, to bring people to truth, and to bring people to live in accord with what God has designed for all of us. And that's the challenge today. And, oftentimes I'll say this, I've been invited, to different parishes around the United States and other countries. And I remember one time being invited in this one particular parish, and I was picked up in the airport, and we had discussed all the topics for the week and what we were going to do. And something must have changed in the mindset from the original invitation, and they asked me to change the topics, change the direction. And I said, no, that's not what we agreed upon, and I'm not sure why all of a sudden you're uncomfortable with this. We have spent months preparing for this. So we talked for a long while, and I said, okay, listen, you apparently just don't want me, so how about we just bring me back to the airport, and I'll go home. And you do what you need to do and what you feel is best for the parish. But I'm not going to change the plans that we made. Right. And so it's fear, it's anxiousness. Because
so what happened? Did you speak, or did you have to go?
I went back to the airport.
Good for you.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenge because I've been a priest now 33 years. Father Joseph Wolf and I are actually coming up on our 33rd anniversary. Aww. He was ordained a day before me, and so it's hard to believe it's 33 years. And I know what it's like to be in parish ministry and looking out at congregations and seeing such a wide variety of people at different states of life. And you have to find a way to preach and to guide souls to truth and love. Exactly.
And the thing is, you're getting at what you said earlier, that they may be concerned about offending someone, but they also run the risk of not providing hope for that person, because that person may feel that an abortion was their only option. God only knows what they were going through, and they may have felt that, well, I'm being pressured, or my child is being pressured, and this is the only thing that's available because this is what the doctors are telling me. They need to hear from the church the truth, and that there is help available.
Exactly. And also to hear good news. I mean, this is in California, probably about 8 years ago when I first went to this particular conference and spoke on the issue of contraception, conjugal love, the vocation of marriage. I met this young couple, and at the time they had welcomed 2 children and had decided that that was going to be all. And so during the conference, which they were participating in, they heard what I said and preached on, and I was there for about 4 days. So they got a good dose of 4 days of messaging. And so fast forward, this happened maybe about 6 years ago now. I was back in that same conference again, and I met this young couple again. And they said, we have been anxiously waiting for you to arrive. And so they said, stay right here. So I said, okay. So I stood there, and then all of a sudden out comes 3 more children. And she said, and one's on the way. And so they heard the message of God's truth, the beauty of love and conjugal love, the beauty of marriage, openness to life, praying and trusting God. And they said, we're so happy. We tell people all the time, they said that not to be afraid, to trust. And, we were afraid. But at the same time, our parents didn't say anything to us. We never heard anything from the pulpit. We never heard anything in our marriage preparation about it. They said, you decide what you want to do. And, instead of encouragement, hope, as you said. And also, I think one challenge that I think the church has, and I'm grateful to hear Pope Leo talking about this now, is that we have to not only speak the truth, but we have to be there to accompany, to walk with, to support them in person. I remember when I was a younger priest, that can't do this today, sadly, because of the circumstances of bad behavior of some of my brothers. But when I was a younger priest, we would encourage, couples, work with couples and their ongoing formation, married couples. And then I also would promote date night, and I would babysit. And basically get a couple of adults together, and they would come over and they would drop their kids off. And we would babysit for them while they would have a 3-hour date, And it was, today, those are young adults. Some of them married themselves now. They said, Father, I remember when you used to take care of us and we played games and so forth and so on. It's a way of support. I mean, that's just one example. But how do we as a church not just support in language, but in actual practice? What can we do to really help married couples and encourage neighbors to help, to be supportive? It's to really build a community that really supports family life and seeks to support family life. And I believe that's the real challenge. I was raised that way, but also we weren't living in a mobile society when I was a younger boy.
Right. Well, the Pope is already talked about the importance of families, and he mentioned that right out of the gate after he was elected. And then he also brought it up last weekend when he was wrapping up the Jubilee for the grandparents and Jubilee of families. Yeah, and I think that is really important. I also think it's important to let people know the language we use, and that there are documents and teachings available. People have not even in this day and age, and we have so much access to information, people are stunned that there are actually written documents that are out there the Church has given us, the USCCB or Pope Benedict or Pope Francis or whomever has given us these beautiful teachings that we can access, not to mention in addition to all the core teachings of the Church. Speaking of groups, I spoke to a women's group earlier this year, And I mentioned the document that the bishops put out about transgender because it was a question that came up. And this one woman wrote me after it. I always think it's interesting. It was Q&A. She could have written down the question. They never ask you in person, I think because they don't want to hear it, right? And so she writes me, and she was trying to be very sweet, but it was so condescending. I'm sure you regret what you said about the transgender agenda. And I said, no. Why would I regret the truth? It was like, she says, you might have offended someone in the audience. I said, if I did, I can't predict. There's going to be all types of people in every audience. There's no way to survey people. And even if I did, that would never persuade me from lovingly speaking the truth. And all I did was answer a question and give them documents.
Exactly.
But she didn't want to hear it.
No.
She wasn't open to it. And then when she did receive my email, she wrote me back and she said, I didn't know about those documents, but that's the thing, Father. So many people do not know.
Exactly, and this is the thing that we, for HLI, that's so center in our mission is education, formation. So not just of our seminarians, priests, but of all of our lay faithful. Because I hear the same thing so often in the mission field. I've never seen this before. I never heard this before. Where can I get this? Where can I read this? And so people are really hungry. But when you hear, this is the beautiful thing about my formation. I was very fortunate and very blessed to be raised in a strong Catholic family that believed in its Catholic identity and promoted it and encouraged it to be lived. At the same time, my formation in seminary afforded me the opportunity to dive deep into the beauty of our church's teaching. And I know not everybody has that chance. But today, because of the internet, people have access to material that I myself didn't even have access to so easily, even in the seminary. So it's there. People need to be hungry. They need to be open. They need to be inquisitive. They need to be passionate about their faith. And at the same time, those in leadership responsibility, especially our pastors, need to take this moment of time. If we're going to change the rudder's direction on our ship, then it's going to take an effort. And it's not going to just happen by itself. It has to take work. It's going to take effort. And that's my prayer right now, that Pope Leo, I believe, is going to take up this baton and really run with it.
Well, we know you'll be there to support him, and we so appreciate your great work. Make sure you tune in to EWTN and stay tuned, because Father Shenan Boquet will be on a number of programs, radio and TV. He's here in studio, and we're so glad he joined us on Catholic Connection on a Wednesday. We'll be right back. Thanks so much for tuning in to Catholic Connection on this, a 4th of July holiday, a special edition of our program here at EWTN's Radio Extra. We're so glad you tuned in. Hope you enjoyed it. We have a great program coming up for you on Monday. I'm so excited. My friend Steve Ray from Footprints of God is going to be joining us. July, of course, a month of the precious blood of our Lord. And Steve is joining us in the first hour to talk about that and the beauty behind it, the meaning. We had the Sacred Heart of Jesus in June. Now we had the precious blood. And I just can't get enough of learning about this. As long as I've studied, I have found, and Steve will, I'm sure, reiterate this on Monday, the more you study, the more you realize you have more to study and more to learn. This is just a never-ending well or an ocean of beauty in our faith. So look forward to that. We're also going to learn more about the brown scapular. And there's an event that is actually going to be offering free distribution. So Steve Kerr-Eckes, who's the founder of scapulars.com, will explain the power and meaning of the brown scapular. And then we're also going to take a look at the 150th anniversary of Our Lady of Mount Carmel in Hamilton, New Jersey, which is coming up. So this is pretty exciting. And what I love about the theme of Monday's show, and it's, God is the executive producer and Richard and Deb my producers, but something happens when you're talking about sacramentals, about important religious items. It gives us a reason to understand the faith more deeply. It's a tool, and we need to find out more about them. And this is going to be a great show. So excited about Monday. But in the meantime, relax. Have a great weekend. God love you. Happy 4th of July.